Welcome to Wise Women's Stories, a podcast where we dive deep into the essence of womanhood, intuition, transformation, and becoming. I'm Edwina Murphy-Droomer, and rather than skimming the surface, we're here to unravel the true essence of womanhood and the layers that shape and define us. We invite you as you enter this sacred space to take a moment of solitude with just your thoughts, a comfortable chair, a warm cup of tea, and your journal.
And I'm Inarra, Aryane, Griffyn. Together we explore the journeys of women who have weathered decades of highs and lows and are now poised to discover deeper mysteries and mastery on their personal development journey. In each episode, we invite you to join us as we work to help you uncover honest insights and share profound stories that empower women to embrace their most authentic, wild, natural selves.
Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back. Tonight we are diving into the fifth task in the initiation of our intuition, following along in the story of Vasilisa. And tonight we're talking about serving the non-rational. So I'm going to start with just reading the first little snippet from Clarissa because I feel like it gives a great grounding in what we're going to be talking about in this particular task. So the psychic tasks of this time of learning are these: staying with the hag, acclimating to the great wildish powers of the feminine psyche, coming to recognize your power and the powers of inner purification, unsoiling, sorting, nourishing, building energy and ideas, washing the Yaga's clothes, cooking for her, cleaning her house, and sorting out the elements. So not so long ago, women were deeply involved in the rhythms of life and death. So in this particular task, we're talking about the sorting from this, from that. And it really is about looking at developing discernment, how we discern what is worthy of feeding, what is worthy of feeding that life force, what is ready to die, to let go of. And as we look at this particular task, we're diving into the three different aspects of washing, sweeping, and cooking. So in mythology, the woven cloth is the work of the life, death, life mother. And in the tale, Baba Yaga charges Vasalisa to do the laundry, to bring this weaving, these patterns known to the life, death, life goddess out into the open, to the consciousness, handling them, washing them, and renewing them. So whenever I think about that purification or the washing in the river, immediately it evokes a picture of these beautiful women in India with their clothes in the river, or women by the stream, and these ancient rituals, according to my way of thinking. In the Western world, we don't do that so much, but it is this way of doing things in a traditional way of purification. And then, it also evokes those images of people being christened or, dunked underwater in rivers. And, forever water has been a source of purification. And so when we think of it in terms of the weaving and cleaning the cloth, and how these different threads get to show their patterns again, and the old threads disintegrate and fall away, which is natural, and the stronger threads stand the test of time. We're thinking about this in terms of not just the physical cloth, but in terms of our psyche. So it's not just, we're thinking about it in terms of energy as well as the physical. So I feel that when we think about this particular aspect of this task in washing, how do we use this? How do you think about this, Inarra, in terms of different things that have happened in your life where perhaps you've used water as purification, or even perhaps in meditation and through your yoga practice? Do you do visualizations that sort of are washing through the inside of the soul, as well as the literal?
Absolutely. I mean, it's so interesting because I wrote a book about 20 years ago called Sacred Journey,
Mm,
and one of the main aspects was looking at the ancient water blessing sites all
mm,
over Britain and Ireland. And I went to many, many, many of them. It was the first form of worship of the goddess,
mm.
water sites, and it had everything to do with the source. As the source comes out, she is recognized as a she, and then they were Christianized much later, and they just put a cross on it and they made it Saint Bridget. But before
Wow.
that, it was Bridie. And the cleansing and the washing and the drinking of water was all the most primal ancient form of worship of the divine. And when I use meditations now, I will often use them to imagine standing under a waterfall, for instance, and the water not only moving on the outside of the body, but moving between each cell in the body. So it's a really distinctive journey that I go on, cleansing out darker areas, areas which have density or heaviness, and releasing old thought patterns. So that's one thing. And I think also that, she really mentions like who is the spider goddess here, Arachne,
Mm, mm.
the original weaver.
Yep.
And the idea that, yes, it's clothes, that's one aspect of it. Clothes are your identity.
Mm,
You're moving through identities, and they're not the same as you
yeah.
keep weaving the currents of life. As life changes,
Mm,
you will have a different identity. And I know when I look back, there's distinctive styles and clothing ranges, and the way I look. I had a whole green phase at one point,
yeah.
which people laugh about, my leprechaun era. That's when I was deep into sort of hippiedom and
Yeah.
going to sacred sites, and I don't touch green now. It's like,
Yeah.
love it, but it's not my vibe.
Yeah.
And you can really feel like we change identities with
Yeah.
the places and the things that we need to deal with at the present moment. And sometimes we
Mm,
just got to let the old go,
mm,
just like green went at some
yeah.
point. Whatever I was dealing with, I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah. I think that persona aspect of, of clothes is really interesting, and cloth. And Clarissa talks about it a little bit more in the book, but it is, your story of wearing green and now you don't like green. It's interesting. I've just done a little bit the same, whereas I've never liked purple, and wearing
Yeah.
purple always made me think of kind of like a tie-dyed, not, like not in a good way. And just recently, I've done a whole rebrand with my business, and the colors that have come through really strongly are these deep. The other color that I didn't like was maroon, because it reminds me of school uniforms. I don't know what it's like in the UK, but in Australia, it's like maroon's like a standard school uniform color. And
Hilarious.
so I didn't like maroon and like deep sort of crimsony maroon colors, and I didn't like purple. And now these really rich crimson maroons and purples are coming through in my branding, and now I love them. It's like I've grown into them.
Yeah, and I love those colors. I mean, you've
Yeah.
changed identity, and that's really
Yeah.
what it's about. The learning, the cleansing, the letting go, and the
Yeah.
cyclical nature of that we don't
Yeah.
stay the same. And
Yeah.
we're not meant to stay the same. We're meant to actually go
Mm.
through life and have different identities as we move
Yeah.
through, and
Yeah.
letting certain aspects go of who you, that's letting go of the routine as well. We could
Mm.
stick so easily into just being the same
Yeah.
over and over and over again. And I know in my life, I've reinvented myself so many times,
Mm.
and I
Yeah.
probably will again. I think it's here. Am I
Yeah.
here? Am I here yet? But no, I'm probably not.
Am I grown up yet? Is
Yeah,
like,
I
have I
know.
grown up yet?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I have just been through this. If we talk about these life, death, life cycles, I've just been through this, and it's taken a few months, but my youngest child finishing school last year, and like I've had for 20 years, for 2 decades, my life has revolved around doing school lunches and getting kids to school and all the things that go with that, which has been massive. And I wasn't expecting to go through this grief process of it coming to the end of that, because it's been a mammoth part of my identity. The core of my identity for so long has been as a mother. It is who I am, for first and foremost. And then it feels like like now I'm not needed in that role in the same way. And so there's been a death of that part of my identity, not a death of being a mother, but the role of, the way that was. So yeah, it's interesting that ties in with this, change in colors that are really appealing to me now, and all sorts of things. It's fascinating to think about it in terms when we start going through these stories, how it plays out in reality. It's it's fun to think about. So the second task is the sweeping. And so Clarissa talks about this in, where was I? I apologies. So the next task is to sweep the hut and the yard. So here she talks about a wise woman keeps her psychic environment uncluttered. She accomplishes such by keeping a clear head, a clear place for her work, and working at completing her ideas and projects. And I know from all the women I've coached and spoken to, completion is a major task for lots of us. It's a real thing that we get to think about and look at. For many women, this task requires that they clear a time each day for contemplation, for a space to live in that is clearly their own, with papers, pens, paints, tools, conversations, time, freedoms that are for this work only. For many, psychoanalysis, contemplation, meditation, the taking of solitude, and other experiences of descent and transformation provide this special time and place for the work. And I think, one of the really fun things to do if you live with other people is to create an environment that's just yours. If you have a space where you meditate, where you can light a candle and have a salt lamp and have your furnishings and your things that are just for you. I'm sure this is something that you've done magnificently, Inarra. So how do you create this, clean, uncluttered space internally
Well,
and
I
externally?
laugh. You should see my desk. You
Yeah,
should see one of the drawers in my desk.
yeah,
But that is my work life. I have this
yeah,
buzzy brain and I'm always up to something.
yeah,
And it stays as clear as possible. However, I do a big thing on altars, and I've taught altars. So one of the things in an initiatory path that I teach is you have your own altar, and
yeah.
there's nobody else can have that altar. You can even have them in the same one every room of your house. In a
Mm,
way, that's a bit like feng shui dives into that as well. But you're looking at the different. What's the focus of the time right now? What's the focus of the moon? What's the focus of your identity? What are you up to? And you fill your altar with all of those symbols and keep it very clean. You might have one mention of every single element. So earth, air, fire, water. So a candle, incense, a bowl of water, and soil or a crystal representing the four elements. One of the things that is an ancient teaching is it's very, very old, and I always think it's incredibly empowering. So air is to know, fire is to will, water is to dare, and earth is to keep silent. And when you have those
mm,
four elements, this is an ancient medieval mega, it's called the law of the magus. When you have those handled, you get the fifth element, which is called ire, or to go. And that's the transformation. So when you think
mm,
about it, the space that we're talking about, actually, she really is talking about holding space for yourself, the sweeping, the clearing, the keeping that sacred space for self. And when I talk about the altar, think about the energy of earth is actually silence, and we don't give ourselves silence often. We turn the phone on all the time. I turn my phone off all night,
yeah,
and I don't have any electrical things in the bedroom. It's like conscious living when you
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you elevate into to go, which is this transformational state, magical state where it's not 1 + 2 = 3. It's actually you do these 4 things and you are going somewhere, like
Yeah.
it's altered states or next level.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting in these tasks she's really addressing the water, fire and earth, because she talks about encouraging people to create a garden to experience that life, death, life. But air is not in this list of tasks. I wonder, I'm trying to think if it comes up in the other ones. Mm.
Well,
So
breath, does it? She must mention
maybe
breath at some point in
breath.
the book, but maybe not in this story. That's all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's actually not, it's not jumping into my mind, and I've studied a lot of these stories. That's interesting. Something that
Mm.
I will look for. To sweep the premises means not only to begin to value the non-superficial life, but to care for its orderliness. Sometimes women become confused about soulful work and neglect its architecture till it's taken back by the forest. A cyclical and critical sweeping will prevent this from occurring. When women have cleared space, the wild and nature will better thrive. One does so what does one feed so wild a goddess? Firstly, to cook for the yaga. So we're on to the third task here, which is the cooking. To cook for the yaga, one lays a fire. A woman must be willing to burn hot. Burn with passion, burn with words, with ideas, with desire for whatever it is she truly loves. It's actually this passion which causes the cooking, and a woman's original ideas of substance are what is cooked. To cook for the yaga, must one arrange that one's life, creative life, has a consistent fire under it. So remembering that, fire really is the metaphor for the life force within us. And what are the things that really nurture that life force, that nourish us? It's creativity and nature. And when we think about nature, it can be absolutely through the food that we eat, but it's through the experience of being in nature and being able to see horizons and sunsets and sunrises and, like all those bits and pieces. It's also being involved in that life, death, life cycle of being in nature. This is part of what nourishes our connection to life. It's our connection to the oneness, the connectedness of all life on earth. And if we're not seeing it, if we're not witnessing the changings of the season, which unfortunately for many people who live in concrete jungles, or it takes more effort to actually witness the changing of the seasons other than just the temperature changing. But it is that connection that fuels our life force. And it's also our creativity. The number of women who identify as being not creative. Well, I can't draw and I can't sing, and therefore I'm not creative. This is a story. This is a conversation that I think is so fun when we dive into how many ways we are creative. And it's, it's how we put food on a plate. It's how we, for me, I've got one of my fun things that I do that's, just like inside my wardrobe, is I've got this obsession with woolen jumpers and beautiful colored woolen jumpers. And I have them all stacked and the colors, and it brings me so much pleasure. So even things like that are creative. Like there's so many ways that we can light this creative fire. What are some of your quirky or fun things, Inarra?
Well, I'm fairly obsessed with clothes, like I know you are,
Mm.
and so along the path, I reward myself with clothes.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking around my house, my flat, and I thought, I don't renew. Like once I've bought something, it just sits there forever, right? I'm
Mm.
really happy with the thing, like the table and the chairs and whatever. So I don't reward myself with new big objects, but the flow of the expression is always around clothing.
Yeah.
And there was a time when I used to feel oh, is this, can I afford this? There would be stories going on around it. Can I afford this? Is this a thing that I should do? And the other thing is, I haven't really changed shape dramatically in my life. So there is no reason often, and I look after things, to let them go. I have to do an absolute binge removal, take them to charity shops. And that's the identity that changes. The thing that changes is not the clothes. They're in
Yeah,
good nick. I look after them. They're the
yeah.
same shape. I could keep them forever like my objects. But no, the cleansing, the clearing, and it's very symbolic for me. And I gave
Mm,
myself permission years ago that
mm,
this is okay. This is how I
mm.
celebrate life itself,
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so big one on clothes for sure. And I know you relate to that.
Yeah, and I have a love for, what's old, whether that is old homes, old furniture, but also I've got clothes that were belong to my aunt who had a fabulous dress shop in a very fancy part of Sydney. And my mum, my mum's going to be 90 this year, and I've got clothes of hers that are probably 50 years old that are just beautiful, like pieces that I've kept that I'll keep wearing. So they carry a soul for me. They carry, like personality. um, so on this cooking part, it is the cooking up of new and completely original things, of new directions, of commitments to one's art and work that continuously nourishes the wild soul. And I think this is one of the conversations that's so important to highlight. The older we get, the more stale we can become. It's like, what can we do to really grab hold of something brand new, try something really different, and explore, unique and audacious and fabulous ideas. It's like that energy of newness, of new beginnings, and creativity is just the ultimate food for the soul. So good.
Yeah, and it's like pushing against your edge, not
Yeah.
just staying in this routine.
Mm,
And it's like we came into life alone, we will
mm,
leave alone.
mm.
So we're here on a soul journey, and
Yeah.
your soul wants to express itself.
Yeah.
And wherever you find yourself limiting, thinking, oh, should I, or whatever, that's the should conversation that we've
Mm,
had before. But even more dramatic than that, I think you can take a moment, shut your eyes, breathe, listener, right now, even shut your eyes, and you can feel where you are not expressed. You can go through and actually ask yourself,
mm,
do I feel on fire? That's a great language. Like, do I feel aliveness in in all areas? And if you don't, really, that's a task to start to work away from that thing,
mm,
whatever it is.
mm,
You're being given an indication. That's intuition right there. It's like if
mm,
something doesn't make you feel alive, move away. And
mm,
sometimes that's big decisions. It's like relationships, styles of food that you're eating. Maybe you want to let go of alcohol, a whole bunch of things, but you will know, where do I feel not alive?
yeah.
And that's the edge right
Yeah.
there. There's
Yeah.
great growth. I would add one other thing that we are taught very much to stay comfortable in
Hmm.
life. Like comfortable is, I think we all have, because I work a lot with entrepreneurs, I often ask them, where are we going? What do you want
Mm,
to do? And
mm,
they have this fantasy of, oh, when all the work's done, I'll be
mm,
sitting with my feet up and I'll be comfortable. And
mm,
actually, wherever the discomfort is, the uncomfortable is
mm,
the biggest growth areas. It's
mm,
the conversations that you think, oh, I don't want to have that conversation. It
mm,
makes me feel, oh, ill or nervous or whatever. If you go have that conversation, suddenly the uncomfortable, there's a revelation there, and
mm,
there's a high speed to your next level.
mm,
Comfortable is not your friend, actually.
mm.
Comfortable is, it's staying absolutely stuck for the rest
Yeah.
of your life. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. Absolutely, on a business front, that has been my experience, as well as in my life. And I think about living, I had a flower farm as a single mum with 4 kids and ran a property. And we had to chop wood for heat, and I used to have to manage my own water and, unblock drainage so that the water would get into the tanks. And there was a lot of manual work that went on, as well as cooking the meals and doing all the bits and pieces. And I was like, I wish I didn't have to do this. And I wish I didn't have to, and it'd be so great if I could just flick a switch and have heat. And it's interesting, when we moved into town and my kids started, preparing more meals, and I wasn't needing to cook for them so much. I didn't need to chop wood anymore. I desperately miss having an open fire. That's one of the things that I miss. I don't have to manage our water anymore. I just turn on the tap and now I miss it. Now I understand almost the meditative practice of that, of being connected to the things that provide life, the things that provide comfort, rather than the comforts just being easy on tap. It's like you've got to earn the comforts. And, it's even when I have a meal that has been prepared by a friend, or I've prepared it myself, the pleasure that comes from that meal, rather than something that's just a takeaway, is chalk and cheese. It doesn't compare. It's like the whole energy that goes into something that you've put work into and had the uncomfortable process of actually bringing it to life, whether it's our businesses or a meal. It's the big and small. I want to just briefly apologize to the listeners, because when I started talking about this chapter in my mind, I was half thinking about chapter 6, which is about the sorting this from that, but we'll get to that. So this chapter really is this, the thinking about the tasks of the psychic tasks that the wild mother gave to Vasilisa to do, to clean out, to sort out, to organize her psychic life. So I'll finish it up with, though you manage to do my work once doesn't mean that you do it, that you can do it again. So here's another day of task. Let's see how you do, dearie. So it's really this idea of you get to prove yourself more than once. This isn't a one and done. This is something that we get to continually do and address and think about. It's like, how do we keep the inner environment of our psyche sorted?
Yeah.
All right, beautiful souls, that is it from us for this episode. And next episode, I will be talking about the discernment of sorting this from that. All right, beautiful ones, that's it from us for this episode. So much love, and bye for now.
Bye for now.